spoken to me, and I'm desperate for you. Spoken, I'm lost without you. You are the air that I breathe. You are the air I breathe. Your holy presence living in me. You are my daily bread. You are my daily bread. Your very word spoken to me. I'm desperate for you. Oh, and I'm totally I'm lost without you. Without you. You are the air I breathe. You are the air I breathe. Your holy presence living in me. You are my daily bread, my daily bread. You are my daily bread, my daily bread. Your very word spoken in me, and I'm desperate for you. Oh, I'm desperate for you, and I'm totally lost without you. Oh, I'm lost, and I'm desperate for you. Lord, I need you every day and time. So I'm lost without you. Totally lost. Oh, I'm lost without you. Yeah. Say I'm lost without you. Yeah. I'm in need for you. Can't breathe without you. Oh no, no life without you. Yeah, no life without you. Oh, stop breathing without you.
Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Serendipity Sunday. We'll be rolling right along shortly. Let me get a couple of other things together right quick. It's good to see those of you who have joined in the Zoom room. Go ahead and type in how you're doing this morning. I'd love to know that. And then for those of you who are with us over on the YouTube platform, I want to say hello to you all also. We're going to get started here shortly. Let me just make a couple adjustments. And we'll roll right into this morning's Serendipity Sunday. I just want to get my screen set up so I can see comments and those kinds of things. Good. All right. Welcome to Serendipity Sunday. which is a weekly presentation by Oasis Spiritual Center for Divine Living. I am the facilitator, Greg Stanton, also known as Asar. I want to thank you for joining. There's a few virtual logistical things I want to cover before we get started. If you're tuning in via YouTube channel, please hit that subscribe button, followed by the notification bell. That way you don't miss out when we go live or when something is being presented that I don't think you want to miss. Also, make sure your comments in the chat section. If you're on YouTube this morning, go ahead and type those in. I will circle back and address them. For my Zoomers, those who are in the sanctuary with me this morning, the sacred place of their home live, welcome. Make sure you utilize the chat also. I see quite a few people are tuning in. They're telling me they're feeling good. Good to see you, Al. Amir, good to see you. Good morning, Mom. Good morning, Courtney. Good morning, Cheryl is back in the United States of America. I think she's in D.C. waiting on her connection to get back to St. Louis. All is well. 21 days on the motherland. We look forward to hearing from her in regards to her trip. Sylvan Free, good to see you, my young man. Good to see you. Good to see you. Well, we're going to get started. So another couple of things I want to add. If you desire to make an offering to the ministry of any size, you just need to you can visit the platform, OasisSpiritualCenter.com, or you can go to Cash App and you can put that into the Cash App, and I'll copy it and drop it a couple places. So you guys will have it. It should be out there for those who want to make a donation to the ministry. Then lastly, I'll put it over on the YouTube side also. So that way you can be part of what we're doing here. So let's go now into today's message entitled Foiled by Frustration. Foiled by frustration. You probably can sense where I'm going to go with this, because in all of our lives, we have been foiled or derailed by the emotion called frustration. So we're going to look at that this morning. Life is full and filled with frustrations, from the minor irritations that you and I experience losing something to the major problems of continued failure towards. If you have a desired goal and if you're not hitting that goal, it lends itself for a level of frustration. Okay, since many of the things we truly want and require a degree of frustration. And what that means is, if there's no frustration, then sometimes I wonder what the buy-in, what the commitment is. So you're going to have levels of frustration. It's a level of frustration is just simply a disappointment, but with a level of intensity. So this morning, I want to pull you into an internal dialogue around frustration. And hopefully you will continue in this week internally dealing with this conversation. We know that frustration is an emotion that we all have or will come to experience at some point in our lives. Right off the bat, we want to just kind of check in with you. Is there anyone that's willing to share a current frustration or a recent event that was frustrating to them? If you want to do that, you can either raise your hand, you could do it that way, or you can type it into the chat. Hey, I got something I want to share, and I'll be willing to bring you on. If you're in the YouTube, I will just look over there and see if I see something typed in. Otherwise, I'm looking to get someone who is in the actual room this morning that's willing to share with us. It may be a frustration that they're dealing with currently, or something they've dealt with in the past. So I'm looking there to see if there's any hands up. And I don't see any hands up this morning for participation. So that's probably because it's early on. But all of us have had some level of frustration. If any of you have engaged me in the past in a coaching relationship, a lot of times it's tied to a level of frustration. Someone says life has been silver, and Free says life has been well lately. Okay, so life gives us some breaks. But when we set some goals and when we really are in pursuit of some things, it can lend it with the level of frustration. So we want to go into that this morning. So this one, I'm going to touch lightly on 4 aspects. I'm going to touch on understanding frustration. We're going to look at what actually caused or the causation of frustration. We're going to deal with be introduced to responses to frustration. We're going to look at some of the universal responses that we normally, as human beings, engage in. And fourthly, we're going to deal with dealing with frustration, some of the things you can do. Again, this is Serendipity Sunday, sponsored by Oasis Spiritual Center for Divine Living. Oasis Spiritual Center is not so much of a church or a religious organization, but it is a organization that is focused on teachings that bring forth the ancient wisdom teachings that can be appropriated into our lives, that give us the ability to master this thing called life. Although majority of the individuals who make up Oasis Spiritual Center have a strong Christian background and have decided to hold on to their Christian belief system with some tweaking, that is reformatting it to be more appropriate to the truths, historical truths, and not just what has been given us. So many times I will use references from one of our wisdom books, is the Holy Bible or the Bible, along with other wisdom teachings and recent writings that have to do with the topic that I'll be dealing with. So let's look at understanding frustration. All of us have had a level of frustration. If you haven't had frustration in your life, type it in over there so we can just pull you in and have a real conversation, because you're doing something that we need to be doing. Now, if you don't have frustration, it's usually because you have not put any demands or expectations on life. Simple as that. If you just go on with the flow, what comes what may, then there's a few frustrations. But when you have an expectation that is not met continually, usually that culminates in a emotional response that is steeped in frustration. So when we talk about frustration, it's something that's common to all of us. Okay, in general, whenever you set a goal, you're going to have some level of frustration. Typically, the more important the goal is, or the event, the greater the frustration will be, and the resulting anger or loss of confidence that can come with that. And we're going to talk about that. Frustration is not necessarily bad. So I'm not positioning this conversation from the point of you shouldn't have frustration. It's a human emotional response, but we want to be able to put our finger on our emotions, understand them, understand healthy manifestations of our emotional responses, and those which are not so healthy responses that don't serve our highest and greatest good. So that's important. So again, I want you to know that it's not necessarily bad if you are frustrated. It can be a useful indicator in many cases of problems in your life. Or as a result, it can act as a motivator to change. It can let you know, hey, I need to either keep doing this, or I need to tweak it, or I need to cease and desist from doing this. So that's what we have to look at frustration as an indicator, a gauge on your emotional. So all of your emotions are like gauges on a dashboard of a car. When you see those things pop up, if the oil light comes on, it tells you, okay, either I'm totally out of oil, or I'm leaking, or I have an oil problem. If the hot water or if the temperature gauge goes beyond normal, I need to address that. So it's likewise, when you have these emotional responses, man is mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual. And too many times we spend too much time steeped inside of the spiritual aspect, whereas the mental, emotional, and physical aspects are something we really need to get a hold on. Because if you don't have those three, a grip on those three, understanding of those three, your whole spiritual essence will be tied to your emotions, tied to your mental, tied to your physical thing. And we're going to loose you. Want your spirit man to be in control, but it has to work in tandem with your emotional self, your mental self, and your physical self. So that is important. So when your frustration results in anger, irritability, stress, resentments, depression, or even spirals downward where you have feelings of resignation or giving up, frustration is on the brink of being a destructive thing. That's why I labeled this morning's message "Foiled by Frustration," because if you don't have a good bead on your emotional selves, your emotional self can really mess up your day. Good example, and we're going to pull these in when we look at Akhenaten, or many people who don't know Moses. But the mythological Moses is the actual historical figure, Akhenaten. Okay, so I'm going to just drop those truths in there so we can begin to realign our belief system. So with the Moses, many of us are familiar with the story of Moses. There was two particular instances where his frustration levels came forth with the tablets when he came down off the Mount Zion with the law, the 10 Commandments, which was the 10 of the 42 declarations. He was upset and he threw the tablets down because of people's inability to move towards the future. As a leader, this frustration that we can feel when we are leading someone somewhere and they refuse to budge or they go back, can lend to frustration. And as a result, he threw the tablets down. And another incident where he was told to speak to the rock, and he hit the rock. According to the myth, it forfeited his going into the promised land. So all of us have a destiny. All of us have a soul path we're called to follow. And sometimes you make mistakes and you can recover from them. But sometimes there may be that thing you do that you can't recover from. So you have to be very careful. Let's say if you have a particular soul path to do something and you end up becoming emotionally distraught and you kill someone and you end up going to jail. So now you spend life in jail and you don't get to fulfill your soul path that you came here to do. So even though we have a soul path, we have a destiny that lies in front of us, but we only can get to that destiny if we allow our steps to be ordered by the law. It says the steps of the righteous are ordered. So we have to know that what steps to take. And even though you may know the next right step, but your emotional self can get in the way. So let's look at what causes frustration this morning. I hope you guys are with me this morning and it's making some sense. So I see it. I just thought of a frustration. I was frustrated with my daughter recently, and I would imagine that frustration is tied to an expectation or tied to the fact that you may have shown her to do things in a certain way and she deviated from it. And so you're frustrated because you may have told her time in and time out. And so the same with source. Sometimes the way God has been presented to us, we believe that God is frustrated with us, but God is a little different than us. Source Supreme is different than us as parents, as our parent, as our father, as our divine guide. It allows us to have the expressions because it knows that it needn't get upset. It needn't send a lightning bolt from heaven to get you, because this thing called karma. When you do something that is not consistent with your highest and greatest good, you're going to get the result of that. For every action, there's a reaction. So we have to know that. So that's important. And Felicity said, exactly, I know, because I have children. If you have children, they will push your frustration button. It was a great chance to work with myself and give her the opportunity to figure out, work with her like God works with me. That's right. We got to give our children the opportunity. Sometimes we don't always have to go in and correct. And when we ask ourselves, why are we frustrated about them and the decision they make? Maybe because it slows us down, costs us money. Then we put the onus on them. We hold them accountable. But don't over stress on, the kid is not going to school. the kid is going to pay, meaning ultimately that kid will repeat that course. And if it meant that they won't go on the family vacation because they have to stay back to complete their senior year coursework, that's on them. And so what we have to begin to do is let people don't take on other people's stuff, even our children. As they age, hold them accountable to the things that's going on. So frustration is experienced whenever the results or the goal that you are expecting to do, not that it doesn't seem to be coming forward. It doesn't, your efforts, you're not getting the return on your efforts. Okay, frustration will occur in this case whenever your actions are producing less and fewer results than you think they should. You become frustrated. Example, for all of those of you out there into this manifestation thing, into this creating this perfect life. Many people get frustrated and they throw in the towel. They say this stuff don't work. Okay, it works if you work it. But sometimes when we're not getting the outcomes we want, when we want the outcomes, we have a tendency to get frustrated. And so those of you who are creatives out there, I want to tell you, there comes a time where you just have to pump your brakes. You have to understand, I've done all that I can do. And the word tells us, after having done all that you can do, stand. After you work the principles, you affirmed it, you have an intention, you affirm it, you did all the things that you should do in your toolbox. Now you just wait on the law. You wait on the Lord. But that usually ends up in frustration for many of us, or we're not seeing what we want to see when we want to see it. The frustration we experience can be seen as a result of two types of goal blockages. So you have an internal, or you can have an external source of frustration. So you got to ask, where is my frustration coming from? Is my frustration coming from inside, internally, or is my frustration coming externally? Okay, one, you have something you can use, one you can do more about than the other. Internal sources of frustration usually involve the disappointment that you get when you cannot have what you want as a result of personal or real imagined deficiency. So if you got a personal, real, or imagined deficiency, such as the lack of confidence or fear or social situations, this is internal. How you interpreting things. I've said it many times, change the way you look at things and the thing you look at change. And so we have to understand that some of our frustration is coming from our internal, the way we're looking at things, the way we are filtering things. We think just because I said it, I should have it. And we're not making space for the time element that needs to come into play here, since you're living in a world that has that dimension of past, present, future. You have to make space for that. Another type of internal frustration results when a person has competing goals that interfere with one another. Sometimes we have not put to paper, one, the life we want to live, two, the steps that it will take to get there, and being clear on the journey we should take. And so what happens is we have competing goals or competing things that really get in the way of us bringing our expectation to fruition. And so you have to be very careful. Many times, if you don't have your goal written down, if you're not clear on what it is you're attempting to create, other people can hijack your time, your energy, and get in the way. And sometimes you may think you're doing a good thing, but taking on that extra effort to help someone else in this particular case may get in the way of your being able to hit your goals. The second type of frustration, so we got the internal frustration, and then that second type of frustration we need to be familiar with is that frustration that's known as external frustration, or the frustration that results from external causes. We have to know that some of our frustration that we're experiencing are coming forward in our lives externally. It's not anything wrong to have anything to do with you and your thinking process of anything of that sort. One of the biggest sources of frustrations in today's world is frustration that is caused by perception of wasting time. You may think you are wasting time. but you're not really wasting time. You may be wasting time, but you may not be. When you're standing in line at the bank or the grocery store or in traffic or on the phone, waiting on hold or watching your day go by, when you have a lot to do, you ever had that frustration where, like you get a phone call, they put you on hold and you become frustrated because it's getting in the way. It's an external frustration that's getting in the way of the thing you want to do. So you got internal frustrations, which you have to process, external frustrations, which you many times have some control over. You can remain on hold, or you can set some boundaries with that individual. Say, I only have 2 minutes, and do something of that sort. So when we talk about internal and external frustration, well, you need to know that external frustrations that many of us deal with often can be avoided. I mean, often are unavoidable because you haven't planned for them. They just pop up. We can try to do something about them in many cases, like finding a different route. If it's you're stuck in traffic, or if you're on hold, you can hang up the phone, but sometimes you can't hang up because it's an important call. Or choosing a different restaurant. If you show up to your favorite restaurant and they have a line, and sometimes we get frustrated, or you order a meal and the meal is not what you want, you can do something about it. You can have that meal returned. It's just the way of life. So frustrations are just the way of life. Our goal in dealing with external sources of frustration should be to recognize the wisdom of that's found in like the serenity prayer. So when I find myself in a situation that is causing me to move towards frustration, I'm reminded of the serenity prayer. And for those of you who don't know, it goes something like this. Source, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. Just say that with me this morning, everybody. Right where you are, I want you to say source. If you want to say God, if you want to say Yahweh, if you want to say Jehovah, if you want to say Allah, that's yours to do. But if you just want to have a general statement, say source, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. The courage to change the things I can. Courage to change the things I can. Sometimes we are frustrated in the things that we want to see change, but we don't have the courage to be part of the change. We'll operate in fear. So again, we'll say, source, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. Courage to change the things I can. And wisdom, now this is important, wisdom to know the difference. You have to have wisdom. See, you have to assess where your frustration is coming from and let wisdom have its perfect work with you. That is to know, is this something that I must go through? Is this something that I can terminate? Is this something that I can change? Why do I stay? Like sometimes people stay in relationships and they're frustrated. And they're frustrated because they say they're stuck. You're never stuck. You have to come up with a plan. Okay? I believe in strategies. I don't believe in just walking out the door, leaving everything behind. Come up with a strategy. You can walk out the door through frustration. The moment you walk out the door, the game changes. When you show up in court, you get a summons to court, and it says that you abandoned the relationship because you walked out the door. So you can't let your frustration, how many people that walked off the job or hit a boiling point where they just couldn't take it anymore and they let the boss have it and the boss let them have it. And so you have to be careful that you don't allow your emotional self to get you to the point of frustration where you boil over and you make a decision haphazardly that you pay for ultimately. That's important. You have to know that. Sylvan Free said, I am learning to let go of frustration and change what I can. Right. To let it go. At the end of your day, sometimes you can say, what was I feeling? Oh, I was feeling frustrated most of the day. Where did these feelings come from? Many times when we are having a particular emotional response, we don't check in with ourselves and say, what's behind that? What is the root of this fruit? The fruit is frustration. No, the fruit is anger. What is the root? What led up to it? Many times it's a culminating of things. It's a cultivating of things and not standing in your voice, not saying what you need to say, not doing what you afraid that if I say something, she's going to leave me. He's going to leave me. If I say something, I make it. There's a way to say everything. And if they leave because you stand in your voice, then it probably to your advantage anyway. But just be calculating, have wisdom. Timing is everything. Just like location is everything when it comes to real estate. Timing is everything when it comes to what you do, how you respond, not react. When we are reacting, we are dealing oftentimes with the level of frustration. When we are responding, we may have that same level of frustration, but we have pumped the brakes, slowing it down, breathe, using wisdom to move forward. Can frustration help you grow in patience and peace? Yes, because all things work together for the good of those who love the law. So the law teaches, the karma teaches you flew off the handle. So when you are now sitting in the unemployment line, should take responsibility for being in the unemployment line because you were gainfully employed last week. And, you look at your behavior, not look at the response of the boss firing you. So you take it back to, sometimes we just look at the end versus looking at what led up to the end. And if you're looking at the end, your friends are come alongside and say, the boss was wrong to firing you. But you don't tell them how you addressed the boss, how you violated the company policy. So what we have to learn to do is take responsibility. And yes, Alan, frustrations teaches, like when we were children, when you were frustrated because you didn't get what you wanted and you threw a temper tantrum in the middle of the store or wherever you threw the temper tantrum, and Miss Voss knocked the dust out your pants because your frustration got the best of you. She wasn't frustrated when she knocked the dust out of your pants. She was parenting. She said, we're going to nip this in the bud right now. So Rosetta knocked the dust out your pants and you didn't do that again. So what I'm saying is, when we have experiences in life, let's say when our frustration level gets out of control and we don't control our emotional selves and we do something crazy, life teaches us. And if you can stand in the lesson that life is offering, then you will gain the ability to make better decisions. So by byproduct of frustration is the learning process. That's correct, Bessie. That's correct. The byproduct of frustration is the learning process. A lot of times when we're in frustration, we need to ask ourselves, are we trusting? Are we leaning into source? And then we can say, well, go back over our historical references and we can say, when I had this situation in the past, source came through for me. I was frustrated then, but I waited on the Lord. I waited on the thing I did all I could do, and I waited. And so then it reminds you that source is working for you. So when we have frustrations, sometimes our frustration is not so much for ourselves, but for those around us who are watching us. They want to see, does he work well under pressure? How does he or she operate when they're frustrated? And guess what? People learn from you. Okay, so one can learn while the situation itself may be upsetting and frustrating. You do not have to be frustrated. So even though the situation is the way it is, you don't have to choose to continue to frustrate. Like I'm one of the first theories of psychology that I learned was reality therapy by William Glasser. And he said that if people stop depressing, they won't be depressed. And many of us, now, unless it's a physiological, biological, chemistry type of depression, but most of our depression comes from the depressive thoughts. So if you're thinking worst case scenarios over and over again. She left me. She left me. She did leave you. That's not doing you any good. You're going to ultimately hit a depressive state. One of the things you find that you can't be depressing and do something you enjoy. And so that's one of the things I tell people who have bounced with depression. When you're feeling depressed, have a list of things that you do that brings you joy. Maybe it's eating ice cream, but you don't want to do that. A one-time intervention is cool, but if you're eating ice cream all the time, now you have another situation to be depressed over. So what we have to do is learn that we can choose our emotional state. Now, when it first show up, it's on us, but now we can choose what we do with that emotional state, what we do with feeling frustrated. Accepting life is one of the secrets of avoiding frustration. Accepting that things happen. When things go wrong, as they sometimes will, when the road you're traveling appear uphill, don't quit. That was my father gave me that when I was graduated from 8th grade. It was a placard. He gave me that placard. And I guess he was telling me, young man, ahead of you, it looks bright, but things go wrong, as they sometimes will, but don't quit. Don't get frustrated. It's okay to have the response, but don't let it take up real estate. Don't let it entrench itself in you. No, so that's important. So I hope something is being said this morning that is uplifting, encouraging, inspiring. And if you're a first time tuning in for the first time, make sure if you're on the YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button, and also don't forget that notification bell so you can make sure you get pulled into the next conversation. Now, also, if you're on YouTube, you want to go up to the banner there, and you click in the banner, you'll see all types of links. One link where you can get connected to the ministry mailing list, a link where you can go into the website. So go up there. A link if you want to give, you can go into that link. If this ministry is being a blessing to you this morning, consider sowing a seed into this ministry. Okay, good. So let's keep moving. Let's look at responses to frustration. Let's take a moment and touch bases with this. Some of the typical responses to frustration include anger, quitting, burnout or giving up, loss of self-esteem, self-confidence, stress, and even depression. You can become frustrated. You've been in relationships. So let's look at a couple of them. Anger, there is a saying that says frustration begets anger and anger begets aggression. That's usually what happens in domestic violence. Somebody is frustrated, they become angry, and then they become aggressive. Direct anger and aggression is expressed toward the object perceived as the cause of the frustration. Perceived as the cause of. No one is causing you to be frustrated. You are frustrated based on the meaning you're giving to this situation. We have to take responsibility. No, they didn't cause you. The way you looked at that situation, as a result of that, you expressed as frustration. Okay, example, if a machine does not work, you might hit it or kick it. If someone gets in your way, you could verbally threaten them or push them aside. If the source of the frustration is too powerful or threatening for direct aggression, okay, displaced aggression is often used. Now, that's what we see in our community a lot amongst Black on Black crime is displaced aggression because the frustration with the system, with the man, and oftentimes they don't feel as though that they can deal with that directly. So they internalize, and then you as the brother or the individual in the neighborhood make a mistake and bump into them or say the wrong thing, they go off. This is what we will label as another form of displaced aggression. The aggression is redirected toward a less threatening and more available object. Sometimes we can take our aggression out on our children. When you look at historically parenting, many of our children were whooped. And now there's a level part of me there comes a point in your life where you shouldn't be whooping a child. But if you are training the child up properly, having conversation with that child, there comes a point where you don't have to put your hands on. But many times as Africans in America, what has this is displaced aggression. What happened to us, we do it to someone else. So we have to learn new parenting skills. We learn new coping skills. Any angry person often acts without thinking. And so that's why you don't discipline your child when you're angry. You don't take any actions when you're angry. Okay, unless you're in a situation, life or death situation, but then you better pump the brakes on anger because you're not using wisdom. You're operating from your emotional self. So you got to be careful with that. Another thing we do when we have frustration, we can give up. Giving up on a goal can be productive if the goal is truly out of reach. Now, you have to know when that, okay, I need to give up on this goal, or sometimes setting a goal aside. A denial does not mean, a delay does not mean a denial. It's not an automatic no. It may be, maybe this isn't the season. This isn't the time for it to happen. There's some steps that lead up to it. And sometimes we don't look at that. We make our request known to the universe and we see it as being done, but we don't take time to look at slow the frame down and see what has to take place before it comes into fruition. Okay. So sometimes giving up or putting it on the back burner may be the best thing to do. However, more often giving up or quitting or being apathetic is another form of giving into frustration. So you have to be careful that you're not giving up in frustration or you are giving up in the wisdom of, I need to let this go. Sometimes with relationships, we give up too prematurely. Every relationship that you're in, you're either giving something or getting something. The best relationship is when there's a dance of giving and receiving. Now, I just have a hard, fast belief. If someone is laying their hands on you, you need to separate from that situation. Now, does it mean that you need to get a divorce? Does it mean that you need to leave that person alone? Now, I say this, you need to separate to get in a place of safety, because sometimes, here's what I found in dealing with individuals who have histories of domestic violence. Usually the individuals that they have projected this aggression on usually leave. So if everybody leaves, this person never comes to grip because now they get in a relationship with a new person. So there early on, if somebody would have said, look, I love you, but you're not going to put your hands on me. And if we want to maintain this relationship, you're going to go get some help. If that person loved you enough at that point, they're going to get help. Most men that I have had in a coaching situation, in a counseling situation, have only showed up because somebody has put an ultimatum on them and someone who's significant to them. It could be a job. It could be a relationship with another person. Very few men are just showing up because they have the wherewithal and have the wisdom to say, I need help. Now, there's some men that I have engaged, but I would say 90% of the men I've encountered, they came because someone had put an ultimatum. And it's just the reverse. 90% of the women that show up for coaching and counseling because they want it for their personal self. 10% are showing up because the job sent them or because somebody has said, if you get help or I'm out of here. So don't give up so quickly, but sometimes you must give up. Another thing that frustration does, it brings on a loss of confidence. Okay. Loss of confidence is a terrible, frequent side effect of giving up and not fulfilling your goal. So you give up and then you got to process and say, I'm not a failure. I'm giving up because at this point in time, this does not represent my highest and greatest good. A loss of confidence and self-esteem means that if we quit once, then the next time we plan to go, we may not be able to accurately assess our ability. So we may say, I'm a failure. I never complete anything I start. So you want to be very careful with the self-talk that follows after you give up. That's important. Let me see here. It says, can frustration help you grow in your peace? Yes. Okay, that's good. Over here on YouTube, I see a couple comments. Rael, good to see you this morning. Understanding frustration. What causes frustration? Dealing with frustration. That is exactly what I'm talking about this morning. And that you are coaching. I'm sure that's something that you engage with your clientele. Internal frustration is best managed by breathing, controlling one star's, which then helps control. Right. Slow pouring, pumping the brakes, breathing, put some breath in it. Okay. Many times we're frustrated, something that's caught us off guard and we're not breathing. Okay. If we are breathing, we're breathing shallow from a shallow place. Yes. Thanks for sharing that. Another thing that we want to look at, so loss of confidence can be the result of frustration because you quit something prematurely or because you don't really understand the time lapse that needs to take place. You say you're a failure. Okay. And loss of confidence, it gets in the way because now you don't want to take the risk of doing anything new. Stress is a big part of frustration. Stress is the wear and tear on your body. We all have levels of stress. Stress is a positive thing. Without stress, stress is the catalyst sometimes, but continued stress is not good for you. And that's important. Too frequently extreme or prolonged frustration and stress strains on us and generates what's known as distress signals. Our body experiences distress signals in a variety of ways, such as you may be irritable, you may be angry, you may be fatigued, you may be anxious, you may have headaches, you may have stomach aches, hypertension or migraines, ulcers, heart attacks. Heart attacks, yes, can come as a result. Colitis can come as a result. So when you are feeling stressed, ask yourself, where is it coming from? Is it frustration? What is frustrating me? Is it fear? Okay. Where's this stress coming from? It can generate in you. Another thing you want to look at is depression. Frustration tends to ultimately end up in depressive episodes. Depression can affect almost every aspect of your life. It affects people of all ages, income, races, all of the cultures. Depression can affect the way you eat, sleep, and feel about yourself. So when you're frustrated, move into depressive state, now you start impacting other aspects of who you are. You're not getting enough sleep. You're not feeling good about yourself. Now there are many other reactions. One of the reactions I see often is abuse of drugs or alcohol. Now, I believe and I teach drugs and alcohol. The sin is when it gets in the way of you functioning. Okay. Even the Bible says, there's time for you to knock the edge off with a glass of beer. So abuse, notice I said abuse. Abuse of drugs or alcohol is self-destructive always, and usually a futile attempt at dealing with frustration. So if you're doing a drug or if you're using alcohol and as a way to deal with frustration, ultimately that substance will have a physiological aspect. Maybe your body begins to crave it. Maybe you get to the place where you use this to numb yourself, and if you're numb from it, you're not dealing with it. Don't have the necessary catalyst effect on your life. Whenever the immediate effects of the addictive behavior wears off, you will find yourself back in the same situation or even worse. So don't use drugs and alcohol to deal with your frustrations, to deal with setbacks. Maybe you just need a break, take a break. Okay, I'm going to take a break. I'm going to take a strong drink and I'm going to chill. Well, I'm going to hit that, whatever that is you're hitting. Hopefully you're understanding the implications of hitting that thing. You don't want to hit it and then you go to work tomorrow and then there's a drug test and then you say that the company is wrong. No, you allowed your frustration to have you to choose something that has far-reaching implications on your life. So the last thing I want to do is we need to learn to deal with frustration. It is unrealistic to believe you can rid yourself of frustration forever. It's going to come and go. But you can learn to do things to minimize your frustration and make sure you do not engage in unhealthy responses to frustration. You can do some things. You can get a life coach. You can take on practices like going for a walk. You can do things like exercise, coming back to it, taking a hot bath. There's many things you need to learn to distinguish between what you hope will happen, which is one thing, and what will probably happen. What you hope will happen and what probably will happen. Sometimes we are speculating worst case scenarios when it's never going to happen like that. And also know what will actually happen, what you hope to happen, what probably will happen, and what actually happened. Life inevitably has its ups and downs. All of us need to leave with that understanding today. It's moments of relaxation and times of tension. When you learn to truly accept this reality, you come one step closer to being able to deal with frustrations in a healthy way. You now are mastering this thing called life. Okay, so there are several types of problems that we will encounter in our everyday living. Those which you know you can solve, those which are not sure if they can be solved or not, and those you know are totally out of your control, and those you are so confused about that you don't even know what the problem is. You ever had any of those? You need to be able to accurately assess your abilities to alter the situations that you're dealing with and know your limitations. Know that you can't do it by yourself. Learning to take things in stride will also help you to become more content and happy. And I believe that the Spirit gave me this topic this morning because I'm encountering a lot of people that's taking on the law of attraction work, taking on or been inside of traditional religion, and they left because they're frustrated. They're not even leaving traditional religion because of the myths and things that they've been taught. They're leaving because they're frustrated because they're not seeing the outcome. How is it that God is supreme, but God can sit by and see your dream just washed off the foundation? Or God can sit by and see your child just sit up the river for 30 years? Why didn't God intervene? As Black people, our frustrations is we have this God that allowed us for 400 years to be sold in 200 some odd years into shadow slavery, but even now to still be impacted by certain people groups. God has nothing to do with it. You are the God, how you process that. So what we need to learn to do is take responsibility for our own lives. Lastly, sometimes you need to have a level of treatment. Okay. If you have frustration and anger, which is a fundamental emotion and everyone experiences it, but if you've been dealing with it and it keeps popping up, get some help. We all suffer from frustration, but when it becomes more than just an occasional thing, every day you're frustrated, you need to talk to somebody. And so there's a couple of approaches that I recommend. One, getting some help, professional help. Two, if you belong to a dynamic ministry where you have people at the helm that understand human behavior, understand the psychology of human beings. Now, every ministry you have not been taught. We have a lot of people who are self-proclaimed. You're called. Know what your calling limitation is. I'm not saying you weren't called to preach, but preaching the word or teaching a doctrine is very different from understanding the psychology of a human being. You can do more damage than good if you tell them what to do instead of being in a place where you know how to process it. Know your lane. If you are a spiritual leader listening to this, make sure you have in your book of business a psychologist or social workers or therapists or psychiatrists. Have these people accessible that you can refer people to. We don't own people. That's the part of my frustration coming through there because I see too many people getting their lives messed up because they've been mismanaged by those who are spiritual leaders who step outside of their lane. So that's all I have this morning. So if this message to you has been a blessing to you, be a blessing to the ministry. Okay, something. I'm not going to tell you what to give, how to give, and I'm not asking or appealing that you give because I have a need. I have a good government job. No, but I understand the spiritual principle. Sow, and it should be sown. Give, and it should be given. It also says you find value. So if I'm seeing you show up every week, either I will see that you are broke and need help financially, and if you've never given anything, or then I ask, why do they come to a place where they find value and never give a return? That's just the reality. I know when we talk about giving, people get their underwear in a bunch. But know this: if you're finding value somewhere, usually there is a return. For every action, there needs to be a reaction. So I thank you, those who have continued to support the ministry at whatever level you've supported it. So we have about 5 minutes left. So what I'm going to do again, encourage those of you who are first-time participants to go into the YouTube banner, read it, check the links, become affiliated. If you're in the Zoom room this morning, make sure you're signed into the website. Go visit it. Many of you have never looked at the website, Oasis Spiritual Center for Divine Living. Now, we're at that point of the year. This is a new year. It's a spiritual year of 7, divine completions. And I'm going to do a teaching on that. I believe I said on the 12th, this coming Monday. So I'm going to get that out. I'm going to do a deeper dive on that number 7 vibration that we are in. Also, those of you who want to know your design, I'm going to put something out there where you can engage me outside of this platform in a professional relationship to help you identify your unique design. Awesome. That's all I have this morning. If there's any questions, go ahead and raise your hand. If there's any comments, I'll go ahead and put them in the comment section. You can do that as we prepare ourselves to leave this morning. I pray again, something has been said to each of you that has been uplifting and encouraging. Let me find, while I'm waiting on you, I'm going to do this. Good. Let's do this. Do I see any hands up? Where? Okay, so I don't see any hands up, and what that tells me, everyone got what they need, understand what has been spoken, don't need any extra clarity. I'm not going to keep you here longer than I need to, so I'm going to move into this morning's closing song. Let me find that song that I would like to share with you this morning. We came in on this song, and I'm going to leave on this song. Let's see if I can find it again. While I'm doing that, if you have a question, just go ahead and raise your hand. Okay, I'm trying to find it. It's not pulling it back up, so I'm not going to waste your time this morning. Again, thank you for stopping by. I hope something was said that was uplifting and encouraging. Tune in next week for Serendipity Sunday. Serendipity means something good and unexpected. Peace. I'm out. I'm Asar. Have a wonderful day.